We're live, I think.
Oh, hello. Thank you very much, Georgi. Hi, everyone. My name is Ia Meurmishvili. Welcome to Dario and to our weekly uh, podcast or video cast, as I like to call it. And Georgi Katcharava and myself are the co-hosts of this. So please, if you like the video and the content that we have here, mm, like our videos, subscribe to the channel. We'll try to provide you English language information on issues that are not widely discussed in English language media. So, Georgi, very nice to see you. So I'm based in DC and Georgi is in
Nice to
Tbilisi.
see you. Yeah, I want to greet our audience and ask them to hit the like and subscribe, and please share this channel with and this program with your friends, acquaintances, and everybody you can reach.
And today we'll talk about a few different aspects of yesterday's press conference, joint press conference of President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was a very loaded with news items press conference, as I'm sure you know already. And we'll try to dissect it to and see how it may apply to the regional um, uh, dynamics for Russia, for Iran, possibly even Georgia. So we'll just dive right in, and Georgi, I will let you start. Sort of give us the overview from your perspective. What did you hear yesterday? I know that you listened to some sections, at least, of the press conference a couple times. Very interesting indeed. Something very unusual, and some are calling it innovative, some are calling it terrifying. So, how do you see it? What was in it for you?
Well, I think some people are praising. I mean, we are obviously talking about the statement by the President Trump saying that United States will move into Gaza and effectively will own it in near future. And he also stated that the second point that is also very important is that where we once from the current population of Gaza, which is around more than 3 million population as far as we know, can move out. And he was calling for partner countries like Egypt, Jordan, and other countries in the region to take to take those who want to leave Gaza and help them to settle elsewhere. Um, some people, of course, praise these statements, and some people will be unhappy and are already unhappy. But let's go step by step and, first of all, review the statements in response to this, say, announcement by President Trump from the side of Egypt and Jordan, which were literally not very happy with this at the moment. Although President Trump also stated that these countries are not, there's no buy-in from these countries as of yet, but they will agree with this. Then he called also for Saudi Arabia to pledge in some financial aid to the resettlement and further development of new Middle Eastern Riviera, as he called it, that has to be built in the territory that we call Gaza. That raises a lot of questions. I think worldwide, within the United States, within the international community, I think also within Israel, and everybody who is just observing the situation in the wider region of the Middle East. So on the one hand, we have a very strong willingness of the newly elected president of the United States to make a peace in the Middle East, and he wants to do it through peaceful means by offering development in the troublesome areas and the resettlement of the population that is actually was also affected by the military actions for decades now, right? On the one hand, this is plausible. The second is that uh, it is still unclear how that can be done. What is the tools, machinery, or legal background to do that?
Right.
So that are the questions, or those are the questions that a lot of people, states, observers, experts, groups are expecting from the United States to hear as an answer, because the intentions are very good, probably, but there's so many uncertain
But there is a long
points.
path, long
Yes, there
path
is a very long
to get to that eventual picture of you know Riviera in the Middle East, as President Trump called it. Um, so today already some reactions, of course, are coming up. Even yesterday we had some reactions. Russia is among those countries that reacted, though very carefully, but still. We also heard from some of the uh, residents, first of all, of Gaza, also some of the Palestinian sort of allies or um, others, let me put it this way. And it sounds like there is this mixed feeling, at least from what I could read in the US media, that there is some mixed reaction based on who you ask, basically. Some people are welcoming the idea because it's uh, devastated for 15 months of war. Gaza is basically, and again, as President Trump called it, is probably like, it looks like a demolition site because most buildings are impacted.
does.
And then you have this um, reaction on the other side of it, which says that we cannot go anywhere. This is our land. And even some countries have suggested that the two-state solution is the only solution for Gaza, which was not a part of the discussion at the press conference yesterday. I don't believe it was even mentioned.
Yes, but yeah, for the United States, the two-state solution was an official policy since early 90s.
Yeah.
So we're talking about roughly 30 years of the state policy of the United States. And this policy was widely acknowledged by the international community, including the United Nations organization. So how this will affect this notion of and these policies of the two-state solution, because of course, obviously, Gaza, under the conditions that were announced by President Trump, will be, as far as I understand it, correct if I'm wrong, uh, is planned to be incorporated as a U.S. territory
Yeah.
somewhere.
Sort
Have
of, there was
some
an
kind.
indication of it, but it's not really clear. It's very
Yeah, it
President
is not
Trump.
clear. That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
and of course, there is a West Bank that is also the Palestinian autonomy territory of the Palestinian autonomy. So it doesn't exclude the two-state solution, but uh, obviously, this announcement is putting an end, at least verbally, on the Gaza as a part of Palestinian state. That's what I read from the statement.
Mm.
So that's why I say, and you also basically are confirming your own opinion, that it has a very long way to go, and there are a lot of questions and uncertainties that we see now. And yeah, we have to sit and wait how it will all unfold, but we are just trying to analyze
Yeah.
something that is very difficult to do so, not having enough information, or
Yeah.
because it is very sudden. It is very sudden and
And it's
very
very big,
unexpected.
very, very unusual. I think even some of the uh, close followers of President Trump were taken by surprise yesterday by this announcement. Um, so very interesting. My observation of the Prime Minister Netanyahu's reaction was that he was very measured. He did not say he praised the idea, but he did not really get into any of the details. So, of course, obviously, it was discussed with him before this press conference, but still, it seemed like he did not really quite have the um, policy opinion about that or some sort of position, other than the fact that that's been his policy all along, that Hamas should never pose a threat to Israel ever again, and Hamas should never govern Gaza ever again. So that's obviously that's what came out from Prime Minister's comments. But do you have any observations on that? Like, what do you think? Could he have been
Uh,
more direct? Could he have said something else? What were you expecting?
I would say, yeah, and very good observation, by the way. I would say that I agree with you. Netanyahu was careful, but he was also very happy to hear what he heard from
Yes,
President Trump.
sure.
On the one hand, on the other hand, we also heard during this press conference two type of no goes. First of all, first no go you already mentioned was no go for Hamas to stay as a factor in the Middle East or destruction of Hamas. And the second no go is the Iran's nuclear program
Yes.
or development of the nuclear weapon by Iran. So these two no were heard very loud, and that is understandable because basically, when we speak about nuclear weapon for Iran, that is probably the main destabilizing factor, and not only in the Middle East but for the global security. And nobody acknowledges this. When we speak about Hamas, this no go is basically because we are talking about a terrorist organization that basically terrorizes, Israel for many years, and now is the opportunity for Israel to destroy it completely. So they will pursue and they will follow this, and probably they want to finish the job.
Yeah,
And
and there was also
good.
I'm sorry. It
Yeah,
was
please.
it was also obvious that the approach of the Trump administration towards defending Israel and supporting Israel in this fight is different from the Biden administration approach to it, and sounds like uh, Israel will benefit from America's both military, political, financial assistance moving forward. And on top of that, as you said, Iran was one of the biggest topics to me. The comp at the press conference, I'm sure it's not just to me, but it sounded like President Trump basically threatened Iran, saying that you will never have a nuclear bomb. Um, his administration will not allow that. So it's very interesting to see what the trickle down effect of this declarations and um, policies that we'll be implementing based on this press conference now or president's statements, what the trickle down effect will be in the region. But before we get to that, I know that you read Russian media on a daily basis. You basically see how the Kremlin is reacting to many of this event. So Peskov made the statement, who's the spokesperson of the Russian government or the Kremlin, and he was also pretty measured in his statement. So, what do you
Very
make of it?
much.
If you want to overview his statement, it was short, but nonetheless, it was um, very poignant in some ways. So, tell us what he
Yeah,
said.
yeah. I think you're right. He was very measured. He also pointed out that Russia is supporting two-state solution, as the rest of the international community, and he supported the position of Jordan and Egypt on a resettlement of Palestinians from Gaza to other locations in the region, states. And that was it, basically. I think what we can think of related to the statement of Mr. Peskov is that Moscow was surprised with the press conference and what they heard, and probably they still need time to digest it. And obviously, being effectively out of the region after what happened in Syria, they don't have much tools to not only intervene but even to be somewhere, you know, with this, decision makers on the same table, at the same table. So
Yes. I,
that makes Russia's position very difficult even to grasp, I would say, for now.
yeah, I completely agree with that. I think with losing positions over time, and especially in Syria recently, I think Putin or the Kremlin is completely not, especially yesterday's press conference, basically completely threw him off balance. That's how I would see it, because President Trump came out as somebody very bold, coming up with this very innovative idea, good idea or bad idea, that's different. But the point is that he is ready to take steps. He's ready to propose something that nobody would expect. So if you take that and apply it to the case of US relationship with Russia, or America's position and policy towards the war in Ukraine, this press conference indicated that, well, we don't know what he's going to do. So whatever game plan that Russia had to this point, I think by yesterday's proposal about Gaza, basically changed Putin's calculus on how he should be approaching Donald Trump. What's your view on that? And then I want to ask you about one more question about the Middle East before we get into other topics.
Okay. I think you brilliantly actually explained the situation from the Russian point of view, and I would like to build on this and actually even go a bit further. I think President Trump, and during this press conference, not only for Russia but for the rest of the world, he might set up the precedent of certain new approaches that can be used elsewhere, as you said, in this war between Russia and Ukraine, or maybe somewhere else. And that is something that we have to still look and analyze. What does that mean for the future
Yep.
as a precedent? Because this kind of, if these policies will start to be implemented somehow, and if United States with Israel and possibly with some other regional countries will move forward, uh, create, let's say, a roadmap for implementation of this plan or something like that, that will change a lot of things uh, on the global scale in terms of certain conflictual situation elsewhere.
Mhm.
And this is exactly what actually might happen, but we don't know how. But that actually also adds up some uncertainty to this whole situation, I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah.
But
Um,
good point. I really didn't thought about it before you mentioned it.
yeah, I think we should see how this continues, and if we see any sort of change in Russia's outlook towards the U.S., which I think in some cases was um, basically same old, uh, predictable policies, predictable statements, and maybe even steps. Sanctions policy, yes, okay, increase sanctions the U.S. has increased sanctions, and especially towards the end of the last administration, it
Yeah.
was very important, some of the sanctions policies that they took. But it still was pretty predictable. But now, what Donald Trump has introduced in the international relations is basically nothing's predictable. You don't even know what I'm thinking. So that's very interesting. But before we continue, Georgi, to that, there was one thing that you mentioned earlier when we were talking off camera, and I think it would be very interesting for the viewers to know as well. So we're talking about the Middle Eastern Riviera, Gaza, very small strip of land on the Mediterranean Sea, of course, beautiful. Um, and there is a project called the Ben Gurion Canal, and you are very familiar with that. So tell us about that and tell us about the importance of this project. How long has it, whatever history you can share about that, that would be great. Because to me, this is something not very well known. And it seems like you have a very deep knowledge in this.
Yeah. Well, when I heard the new Mediterranean Riviera, this project just popped up in my mind
Mm,
because this is an old project. It's construction of the Ben Gurion Canal that has to cross Israel from the side of Gulf of Aqaba towards the Mediterranean Sea, and it should be constructed in the close vicinity to Gaza Strip, or then another option is to cross the Gaza Strip.
mhm,
So, and the project, first of all, has to be serve as a barrier for invasion, or like a defense line on one hand. And on the other hand, is the area of the future development of Israel. I mean, new settlements, new cities, new investments, etc., as well as to serve the alternative to Suez Canal that was built more than 100 years ago. So it's a costly project, as you can imagine, but this is a vital project for further development of Israel and for the whole area around it, not only for Israel but also for the neighboring countries. So it popped my mind, but if the problem of Gaza in one way or the other will be actually resolved in a peaceful way, that project may be facilitate further development of the whole, Middle East region, because it will provide a modern, maritime connection between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, with the new infrastructure, with the new possibilities, uh, and that can have a very positive impact on the global trade as well. And that will create an opportunity for Israel to become a logistical hub, not only for the region, but globally.
mm.
So
So,
that's what my thought is, that this project might be a driving force, or vice versa, to what we're hearing from Mr. Trump and from Mr. Netanyahu right now.
that's very interesting. So it's also weakening, I guess. If well, first of all, at what stage of the implementation are we at? Do you have any?
It's
It's
not been
just
implemented. It's just the plans, but these plans are not very new, and these plans need to have a peace environment, because the security for construction of, or this sort of investment of this scale, needs security in the whole area, security
mm,
and peace. So if the peace can be achieved through the late initiatives that we just heard on this press conference of Mr. Netanyahu and Trump, that might be the precondition to actually heavily invest in this project. And if we are theoretically now thinking that U.S. will be present in Gaza, it presumes that because of the situation we have right now there will be a kind of a U.S. military contingent, possibly maybe a Navy base that can be used as a protector of the you know canal
Mhm.
in the future.
Yes, and as I recall, in back in 2021, during the Abraham Accords discussions, the canal was also sort of referenced to a few times publicly as well. So that's obviously a strategic project for Israel, and the U.S. is. I have not heard what the official position is at this point, but I'm sure we will have some references to it in U.S. media and maybe even some official statements as well. Because it's if it seems to me like if the U.S. is having a sort of more comprehensive, more all-encompassing policy towards Iran, this canal looks like it basically will weaken Iran's maybe hold or Iran's positioning in the Red Sea. Do I
Not
understand?
only, I mean, you touched upon a very important uh, issue that was also part of the press conference, by the way, because if you remember, President Trump also referred to Houthis
Yes.
and their efforts to close the entrance into the Red Sea as a major maritime
Mhm.
route for trade route.
Yeah.
And he said the United States administration is going to act against his as a terrorist.
Yeah.
So that also feed into the idea of having a peaceful maritime connection between the Indian Ocean and Mediterranean.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, he did refer that to the disruption of international trade. Yes. So very interesting. So lots of things to watch out for. It's only been what, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks? Well, two
Two and a
weeks and a
half.
bit since President Trump's inauguration, and we're already seeing some of the major moves of the on the basically the chess table by this
Chessboard, yeah.
chessboard. Yes, by all kinds of different players. But so far, to say one more thing about the Middle East, so far it seems like um, the release of the hostages is going on, but Hamas is still keeping some of them. So there's a big controversy on that as well. To what extent yesterday's announcement will really help along the process, and some critical of the President Trump's announcement yesterday are saying that this process will probably slow down the release of the hostages. Do you see anything on that? What are your
I
thoughts?
don't, yeah, I don't see, I read the same opinions as you just mentioned, that a lot of observers are basically stating that Hamas might use these statements by President Trump as a signal to basically jeopardize the hostage exchange process, which might happen. I do hope that those agreements that were reached with the help of the administration of the United States will be kept, and the second and the third stages of this change will follow. But we'll see, because I don't know. I think the situation is uncertain also on the side of Hamas or Palestinian side,
Right.
because I mean this nobody was expecting these kind of statements from this press conference. So I think a lot of people, including politicians, policymakers, and everybody else, are just digesting what does that mean, as we do. What we do it loudly and for the audience and for us as well, of course.
Yeah.
We don't know what is happening in their minds and what they're thinking and what is their understanding of the whole situation.
Yeah. Yes.
So this
And
is
as you mentioned at the beginning, there are so many different angles to that. There's a humanitarian side, there's the international law side, there's a precedent side, there is I don't even know how many of this
there's a
as-
military, there's investment, there's financial commitments, like where to build settlements if people want to move. Don't move, what to do with those people who doesn't want to move, because you cannot just force people out of that area.
yes,
If something will be built there, who is deciding what to build?
yes.
Yeah,
And
who
how about the
who will be
property?
governing?
I don't know. I don't
Yes,
know what the
exactly.
yeah.
And who will be governing the place? Like, it will be a military governance, like United States military, or it will be a civilian one. If that will be a civilian one, whether it will be elected or not, or appointed,
And
or
if
I
you
mean, there's
resettle
so
people,
many
then
questions.
who elects the elected government? Yeah, no, it's
But we're jumping so far ahead, but there are so many questions, so many issues, and there's no easy solution to any of those.
yes, of course. And we're
And
talking about some of the grievances, some of the cultural sides, some of the, sacred sites for population that lives there, for the Palestinians, and it's uncertain. We just don't know so much. It's again, it's we can keep asking questions
I,
over and over,
I
and
think yeah, I
at the
think
time,
yeah, nobody knows. I
nobody
think
knows.
nobody knows.
Georgi, there was
Uh,
another very interesting reference to um, mm, at the press conference to Ukraine in this case, and
yes,
it was also noteworthy. There was, I think, President Trump was very careful not to say too much about Ukraine, even though there was a question about it. He sort of did not want to take the thunder away from his Middle East policy or the declaration or proposal about Gaza, but also he was. Th- he made a big statement about Ukraine, basically, right? He said that Ukraine has this rare earth minerals that the U.S. would be interested in. So, to those of our viewers who have not seen the comment or would like a reminder or maybe an explanation what it could mean, what would you say on that? Was it something that surprised you hearing that? And tell us also what is it that we're talking about here?
I think we're talking about, okay, for many viewers who are not aware, Ukraine, taking into account the deposits of different minerals, natural resources, is one of the richest country in the world. And definitely, probably the second richest after Russia in Europe. That's, I would say.
Mm.
And it possesses a lot of mineral resources, including oil and gas, by the way. Uh, but it also consists of rare earth minerals.
Mhm.
And to understand why it's important, and the deposits are very significant, by the way. So, according to the assessment made by some U.S. U.S. based organizations, I would say, uh, these overall resources exceed $20 trillion.
Yes.
We are talking about a very significant resources. So, and the Trump administration or proposal, actually, as far as I understood, coming from from President Zelensky's administration as a part of the peace plan. They want to guarantee possible future loans from the United States to finish the war in Ukraine. I mean, for weapons, obviously. They want to guarantee these loans with the mineral resources that Ukraine possesses. So it's a trade-off. I mean, it's not like U.S. provides money and Ukraine gives an access to its mineral resources. No, this is a guarantee, meaning that U.S. provides funding for war or weaponry for that reason as a loan to Ukraine, and then Ukraine will pay it off in the future, like 10, 15 years after the war, but as a guarantee that Ukraine will pay off this debt will be those resources that I just mentioned. So if Ukraine will not be able to repay fully or partly the debt or loan that the United States will provide or might provide to Ukraine, so this resource, the United States will have a right to explore the resources, or U.S. companies.
Well, I think Ukraine needs to agree to that first, and then.
I think this is actually coming from Ukraine. This proposal is it's coming from, as far as I understood. I'm not very sure, but what I mean by this is that very important also to understand. Yeah, sorry for interruption. First of all, I speak too much today, but I think that shows that there are certain consultations between Ukraine and United States. It's not a negotiation yet, but definitely a consultation process. And probably there is also a consultation process going on with the side of Russian Federation.
Well, President Trump said that yesterday, that he's talking to both the Ukrainians and the Russians. So there's probably some sort of preliminary sort of checking the positions of all sides. We should probably remind the viewers that initially President Trump, during his election campaign, he was saying that he will end the war in 24 hours. Then, after he appointed General Keith Kellogg as the special representative for Ukraine and Russia, then General Kellogg came out and said that achieving a ceasefire of a sort would be a 100-day goal for the Trump administration. So it's been, 14, 15 days since it started. I guess the countdown to 100 days is going on. Some are still saying that it's a very ambitious goal because it's not Ukraine that needs convincing. It's Russia and President Putin who need convincing to end this war. And only Putin can end this war, not President Trump, not Zelensky, not General Kellogg or somebody else. So should be interesting to see how, as we're getting closer to that 3-month mark or 100-day mark, where we are. And it's encouraging to hear that if it's the Ukrainians who are proposing this, in my mind, that means that they understand that President Trump came with the mandate to make America great again, to strengthen America's positioning and bring in the manufacturing back, and all those election promises that we're very familiar with. And paying back debt fits right into that agenda. It's not some sort of charity, and Ukrainians have been saying it in different contexts, but still, that it's not a charity what the West is doing with Ukraine. It's an investment in a peaceful future. But now with President Trump, they are still, I guess, saying that, well, it's not a charity that you're doing. There is something in it for you as well. And considering that most rare earth minerals are more than a half or a very large percentage globally are under Chinese control or domination somehow, and by different ways, I think it would make sense for America to tap into that Ukrainian resource, especially if the Ukrainians agree to it, and end the war in a just, sustainable way that will ensure that Ukraine is never invaded again. So, therefore, that America uses these resources that were committed to it. So, very interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you
It's a
see?
win-win situation. Yeah, it's a win-win situation for Ukraine and thank you for mentioning China. China possesses 60% of rare earth minerals. And just for our viewers, these are the materials that are widely used in IT and high-tech technologies. So this is very much future-oriented resources that are needed
That
for
mainly the chip production.
chip
Uh,
production. That's
yeah.
true. Well, I think you are right that actually that approach is very much fitting the position of or views of President Trump and his administration of the rest of the world, especially when it comes to providing security guarantees for allies.
Hmm.
Because even during the first first Trump administration, we heard that the NATO allies have to pay their dues to the United States for weapons, etc., etc. So there's no free lunch, especially when it comes to the defense area. So I think this approach of, let's say, guarantee the loans with the resources to provide necessary equipment and weaponry to win the war,
Hmm.
that is the formula that is acceptable for the United States
Yes.
and for Ukraine for that matter.
Yeah, and that's not a very new idea, because I remember last year there was a Mike Pompeo's proposal how to achieve peace in Ukraine, and that was basically one of the proposals that they get a loan from us. Like we can do the land lease, which was approved but never implemented under Biden administration. And everybody in the conversations about what President Trump may want from be it the allies or adversaries is what's in it for me. It's for America. He's very transactional. That's usually the assessment that you hear of him. And in this transactional sort of mindset, it's again win-win. And the Ukrainians have said many times over and over again that they don't want charity. They are standing up for something much bigger than just survival of one country in Europe. It's much bigger. So yeah, and I have not seen any of the reaction from NATO today. It's still not very late here in Washington, but maybe there will be things coming out. But it should be curious to see what the NATO allies are saying about this because I don't want to change the topic and we don't have to go into this today. But we were talking about what Canada becoming the 51st state, then we are talking about the Panama Canal, and then Mexico, and then Greenland, and now we're talking Gaza. So very, very interesting. It's basically like a roller coaster of news, especially for people who observe the foreign relations and are in the news media business. This is a very interesting time.
Yeah, and I would say that it's interesting and intriguing time.
Mhm.
And when you mentioned Mr. Pompeo, I can go back as much as ancient Greece, when different city-states were actually paying Athens for protection.
Yeah,
That started there. Yeah, so
yeah.
it's not a new formula. I have a question here, right?
No, okay. There's a question. What this
What all
development
this?
is for Georgia? Very, very interesting. I think Georgia is. I don't know how this particular development would directly apply to Georgia. And Georgi, please, jump in at any point. I think precedent-wise, this may not be a good thing for Georgia. Because if the United States decides to resettle whoever the president decides, then what stops somebody else, some other president, let's say Vladimir Putin, to resettle people um, in the territories of his choosing? So, in that sense, I think precedent wise, at least it's only been less than 24 hours. So, we need to see how it continues. But I don't see a positive for Georgia in this case. In the case of Ukraine and sort of transactional nature, maybe of assisting Ukraine, that could actually be good for Georgia because if Ukraine achieves with America's and Western help just peace and ensures that there are certain mechanisms that prevent Russia from reinvading in another 10 years or 15 years, then that's a guaranteed sort of, for the region, that's a guaranteed stability in a sense, which I think will have implications on Georgia. I do believe today that Ukraine's success, Georgia's success depends, democratic success, I should say, depends on Ukraine's victory or just peace in Ukraine. And if rare earth minerals that Ukraine is willing to commit, if they are doing that, helps resolve this and helps end the war to benefit Ukraine, I think that will be good for Georgia in that sense.
Yeah, very legitimate. I also see several, let's say, parallels in this process. First of all, when it comes to setting up the precedent, I would say not literally related to the resettlement of people or something like that. I would say the willingness of United States to move into the troubled area to settle certain problems, because any conflict, any war is unique, and the settlement should also be a unique one-off exercise. It should not be, like taking copy paste from one place to another. That's literally impossible because all conflicts, etc., are different. Secondly, when we go back theoretically at the moment to this idea of building the canal and securing the maritime trade routes globally, in this case, I would transfer it softly towards building Anaklia port in the Georgian
Middle
regions,
corridor.
and securing the maritime trade route in the Black Sea, because we are talking about, when we talk about Ukraine, there are several issues related to the safety, security, and peace for Ukraine. One of those, among others, of course, is the Black Sea security.
Mhm.
And the Black Sea security cannot be assured without securing maritime borders and maritime trade through Georgia. And
But
this is the most, because this is a gateway to the very important region where actually the United States is competing with other powers, but mainly with China, and I'm talking about Central Asia. Without Port of Anaklia and controlling the port, and we understand that, first and foremost, United States is a maritime power, is the biggest maritime power in the world. Uh, and uh, this port can play a huge role in the trade between the East and West. Not only China and the West, but also Central Asia with all its resources, because, as you said, access to resources becoming a very important factor in the politics. And when we're talking about, for example, Canada, Greenland, United States, etc., we are talking about the North Pole. And why we're talking about the North Pole? Because of the resources that are actually located there, and we know
and
that because
the
of the
trade routes. Yeah.
and the trade routes. And because of global warming, by 2013, well, that's the prediction or calculation, the northern roads through the North Pole will be possible because of the melting of the ice there.
Yes, which is going to shorten, actually, is going to cut the time from Asia to North America by half.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, by
it's
half.
it's a
And
lot of
this is
it's a lot of money. It's a lot of
this
time.
this is also important. And when we're talking about possibility of building Ben Gurion Canal, when we're talking about another very important spot, which is Panama Canal, and we don't have time now, but we probably speak about it in the future. I'm talking about the visit of Secretary Rubio to Panama and negotiations that he had over there, and the commitments that both countries now have related to the issue. And now we are talking about also the Anaclea port. These are all part of the one chain, which is the international logistics network.
Yes,
And
yeah. I mean,
if we are talking about development of economic development of United States in the future in a certain way that you already mentioned earlier in this program, I think the safety of maritime routes, trade routes, are very important for the United States.
absolutely, yes.
So
And
that's
to so
how I view the precedent of Gaza or everything that relates to the Middle East right now when it is translated to Georgia.
yeah, yeah, and I would also say that it's up to the Georgians to make the case for the United States or to anybody else that this is an important part of real estate. This is an important part of the trade routes between Asia and Europe. Black Sea is becoming a very strategic piece of water or um, sea for NATO and the Western allies. So is it for Russia, and we're seeing that by you know, constructing a port in Ochamchira and many other things that Russia has done in the Black Sea. We should, by the way, talk about this in one of the shows because things are.
Yeah, not only that, but I would like to mention here that completion of the renovation of airport in Sukhumi, in Babushera Airport, which has a very long, 3.6 kilometer long strip.
Mhm.
This is the longest strip in Georgia.
Yeah.
That
Well, because
is
initially,
never closed. Airport is never closed because of the weather conditions and the climate, and it can be used for military purposes very easily,
yes, yes,
especially
that's why it's so
for the
long.
strategic bomb.
Yeah, that's why it's so long because it's for military purposes and civilian, just the civilian,
Yeah,
whatever civilian airplanes or aircraft are using it now is because they are allowed to use it. But obviously, it's a military infrastructure for when it's needed. So I think to our viewers' question, Georgia needs to be doing its homework right now. This is the kind of time when we're seeing so many changes, and Georgia needs to define its place in this universe. And at this point, it sounds like the Georgian authorities are choosing to intensify their relationship with China as opposed to the West. So we'll see. It's very hard to know how this is going to continue. Again, in my
and
view, everything
unfortunately,
hinges on how and when the war ends in Ukraine. So let's be hopeful.
unfortunately, Georgia is in turbulent times, so we do hope that uh, sooner or later, but better sooner, it will be back on track and will fulfill
And on the
its
Western radar,
obligation.
as opposed to
Yeah,
Russian, Chinese, and Iranian radars. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Georgi, I suggest we We've been talking for 55 minutes. I think we got some of our listeners and viewers a little bored. Maybe not. Please, if you liked it, please send us likes, send us questions. I was just being, no, kind of, I'm sure it was not a boring conversation, but I was just suggesting that we spoke for almost for an hour. So we'll give you a
That's
break.
true.
We'll be back. We'll be back in a
We'll be back
week,
next week.
at the same time. And thank you very much, Georgi. Always, you're
Thank
so
you. Yeah.
thoughtful and insightful. You know so much stuff. Thank you.